Cubism is considered the most influential art movement in the 20th century. Cubist artwork objects are analyzed, broken up into different images, and reassembled into an abstract image that's a viewpoint of many different angles. Cubism was developed by Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque in the early 20th century. Picasso liked to showcase animation, while Braque focused on contemplation. Cubism art movement had two branches, analytical cubism and synthetic cubism. There are three phases: early cubism, 1906 to 1909, in which work was primarily Picasso and Braque; high cubism, 1909 to 1914, in which Juan Gris became well known; and late cubism, 1914 to 1921. Early cubism is also Cézanne's, because the Cubist movement began as art that was inspired by the work of Cézanne. Analytical Cubism started in 1909 and lasted until 1912. It refers to Cubism artwork that showcases specific shapes to signify an object within an art piece. The most complex time of analytical Cubism was called Hermetic Cubism because it was almost impossible to figure out the images. Synthetic Cubism grew out of analytical Cubism. It involved the use of collage as well as paint to create the artwork. The artists found that by repeating many of the analytical shapes they used, their work became more simplified and flatter. The use of collage within the painting created an entirely new type of work. Real pieces of paper, bits of musical sheets, even pieces of playing cards were added to the paintings to give them further depth. Picasso and Braque's use of collage in this way was termed papier-collé. The Cubist artists formed two different groups: the gallery Cubists, which were Picasso and Braque, because they exhibited under contract with Daniel Henri Convailles' gallery, and the Salon Cubists, which included Henri Lafauconnier, Jean Messenger, Albert Grès, Fernand Léger, Robert Delaunay, Juan Gris, Marcel Duchamp, Raymond Deschamps-Villon, Jacques Villon, and Robert de la Fresnaye, because they exhibited in shows supported by public funds. Synthetic Cubism's use of high art and low art, made by an artist combined with art made for commercial purposes, can be considered the first pop art. Sérèille was a small town in France where the Cubists preferred to work, called the spiritual home of Cubism. The following are examples of Cubism art, following the different techniques of Cubism. Le Démoncé de Vignon, 1907, Pablo Picasso, oil on canvas, considered the first Cubist painting, inspired by the work of El Greco, Cézanne, and Iberian and African art. Candlestick and playing cards on a table, 1910, Georges Braque, oil on canvas. The composition of this small oval painting consists of clearly defined Cubist planes in hues of brown and ochre, highlighted by black and white. In rectangular analytical Cubist paintings, planes and facets of forms concentrate in the center of the composition, and the corners remain relatively empty. An oval format avoids such corners, and therefore Braque and Picasso sometimes favored this shape. Opium, 1910, Maurice de Vlamarque, oil on canvas. Maurice de Vlamarque was a self-taught painter who was considered part of the short movement of Fauvism, but his experience in Cubism brought one of his finest works of Cubism. Still Life with a Bottle of Rum, 1911, Pablo Picasso, oil on canvas. Painted during the high analytical phase of Cubism, one of the first Cubist paintings by Pablo Picasso to include lettering. Eiffel Tower, Tour Eiffel, 1911, Robert Delaunay, oil on canvas. Delaunay called the period of this Eiffel Tower painting his destructive phase. Delaunay wanted to capture movement, but also great amounts of space and vastness, while showing modernity and progress. Apropos of Little Sister, Apropos de Joncheur, 1911, Marcel Duchamp, oil on canvas. Duchamp was the brother of artists Raymond Deschamps-Villon and Jacques Villon. In 1911, Duchamp made the change in artistic styles from one of traditional easel paintings to a quick succession of more modern styles. Duchamp would only paint until 1913, when he would give up painting and turn to perfecting the game of chess. Violin and playing cards, 1913, Juan Gris, oil on canvas. Gris preferred to use large overlapping planes, which were inspired by Picasso and Bloch's papier collé. It's Gris's work that the style of synthetic cubism began to be seen regularly. The Conquest of the Air, 1913, Roger de la Fresnaye, oil on canvas. Roger de la Fresnaye sought to create a monumental colored cubism without converging into the abstract. This piece is considered one of an original contribution of Cubism. Carrousel Pierrot, 1913, Alexander Archipenko painted plaster. Alexander Archipenko was a Ukrainian artist, and once arriving in Paris, he was in the company of Pablo Picasso and the Duchamp brothers. Not unlike some Cubist painters, this sculpture is a figure in motion and inspired by Marcel Duchamp's nude descending a staircase. Portrait of Igor Stravinsky, Albert Glaise, 1914, oil on canvas. Glaise co-wrote the book De Cubism with Jean Metzinger. Glaise played an important role in making the United States aware of modern art. In 1912, Glaise spoke against Marcel Duchamp exhibiting the painting Nude Descending a Staircase No. 2, which many Cubists felt too scandalous. Glaise continued to produce Cubist artwork up until his death, well after the movement ended in 1921. Horse, 1914, Raymond de Champvillon. Raymond de Champvillon, brother to Marcel de Champvillon, mixes machine and animal in the principles of Cubism. Ocean 5, 1914, Piet Mondrian. Charcoal and gouache on wood pulp. Wove paper glued to Homosode panel. Piet Mondrian, arriving in Paris, Piet adopted the style of Cubism. In this piece, inspired from Cubism with an oval layout and grid structure. Table by a Window, November 1917, Jean Metzinger, all on canvas. Metzinger was part of a plateau group that was involved with the brothers Duchampvillon. He co-wrote the book De Cubism, published in 1912. A large amount of Metzinger's work was variations of a theme. This work is a variation of his still life works: a vase and flowers, a glass with absinthe spoon, a copy of the journal L'Heure, and a playing card, all set up near a window in his studio. The Bargeman, 1918, Fernand Léger, oil on canvas. Léger preferred to use lots of color. Léger also incorporated additional shapes such as cones and cylinders in his work. The Bargeman illustrates how Léger worked to capture movement in his art. Still Life Barbara, 1918, Gino Severini, oil on panel. Gino Severini increasingly focused on the harmony of geometric constructions of the Cubism style, and his favorite subjects were the still lifes, with musical instruments and scenes from Commedia dell'arte. The Reader, 1919, Jacques Lipchitz. Lipchitz was one of the finest Cubist sculptors during the movement. Head of a Young Girl, 1920, Henri Leron, terracotta. Henri Leron uses Cubist painting principles in this bust and a different visual experience as you circle the piece. Mandolin and Guitar, 1924, Pablo Picasso, oil with sand on canvas. Another wonderful piece of Pablo Picasso. He brings vivid colors and shapes that define the Cubism period and the continuation of value of the technique. Ruborhombic Vase, 1928, Reuben Haley. Reuben Haley captured the geometric planes and dramatic angles of Cubism within the spirit of the 1920s. Large rowing machine, 1950, Jacques Villon, oil on canvas. Jacques Villon, a brother to Marcel Duchamp and Ramon Duchamp. Villon painted under the name of Jacques Villon instead of his given name Gaston Duchamp to distinguish himself from his siblings. In this piece, you sense movement, yet it still captures the Cubism technique. The art and style of Cubism was innovative and brought about tremendous change to the art world. Though it lasted for only a short time, its influence is still seen in many pieces that are created today. The most recognizable art, and for Picasso and many others, it was truly life-changing. Its mark, first in drawing and paintings and then in sculptures, was quite pronounced. It's interesting to note that with such a drastic change in art style as Cubism was considered, that some Cubism artists felt some pieces went too far, as with Marcel Duchamp's New Descending Staircase No. 2. Even with this controversy, as seen from Alexander Archipenko's sculpture Carrousel Pierrot, Duchamp's works would consider subsequent art pieces and assist them in the evolution of the movement. This is perhaps a significant point that describes a successful movement. On behalf of Chastity Ann Baker, Lorna Marie David, this is Portia Maria Pfeiffer on Cubism.